The human shuttle docked at Station Harmony without any fanfare. No announcements were made. No special greetings were prepared. The humans were still new to galactic politics, and most species didn't think much of them yet. Captain Park Do-hoon stepped off the shuttle first. He was a man of average height, with short black hair and a calm face that rarely showed emotion. His eyes moved slowly across the docking bay, taking in every detail. Behind him came Lieutenant Kim Yuna, a woman in her mid-30s with her hair pulled back tight. She walked with the same quiet awareness as her captain. Then came the rest of the team: Sergeant Han Ji-soo, a man who never seemed to blink, and Private Baek Soo-jin, the youngest of them all, but no less focused. They wore simple, gray uniforms. No armor, no helmets, and most importantly, no weapons. The Krix delegation was already waiting nearby. They were tall, insectoid creatures, with 4 arms and hard shells covering their bodies. Their guards carried plasma rifles that hummed with energy. Counselor Veth, the leader of the Krix delegation, watched the humans with all 4 of his eyes. His mandibles clicked in what might have been amusement. "They send their weakest to speak for them," Veth said to his aide. "Look. Not even a knife between them." His aide made a sound of agreement. "Perhaps they don't understand how things work here." Ambassador Choi Minho was the last to exit the shuttle. He was an older man, with gray at his temples, and a warm smile that had helped him through many difficult negotiations on Earth. He adjusted his formal coat and nodded to Captain Park. "Shall we?" he asked. "After you, Ambassador," Park said. They walked through the station's long corridors. Everywhere they went, other species stopped to stare. A group of Talari, large beings with 4 arms and blue skin, whispered among themselves. A pair of Voss traders, small and covered in brown fur, actually laughed when they saw the human guards. "Where are their guns?" one of them asked loudly. Kim Yuna heard the question. Her expression didn't change. She kept walking. The council chamber was an enormous circular room with seats rising up in tiers. Representatives from 47 species filled those seats. At the center was a raised platform where speakers could address everyone. High Arbiter Nolan sat in the highest seat. He was an amphibian creature, very old, with skin that had turned from green to gray with age. He had presided over the council for 60 years. When the human delegation entered, the chamber grew quiet. "No weapons," someone said. "Arrogant," another voice added, "or stupid." Ambassador Choi walked to the center platform with his head held high. Captain Park and his team spread out around the edges of the chamber. They didn't cluster together like other security teams. Instead, they positioned themselves at separate points, each one covering a different angle. To most observers, it looked random. It was not. Counselor Veth was the first to speak. He rose from his seat, his 4 arms spreading wide. "High Arbiter," he said, his voice echoing through the chamber. "I must raise a concern before we begin our formal business." Nolan's large eyes blinked slowly. "Speak, Counselor. The human delegation has arrived without proper security measures. Their guards carry no weapons. They wear no armor." Veth's mandibles clicked rapidly. "This is either an insult to this council or a sign that humans do not take their role here seriously. Either way, it demands explanation." Many representatives made sounds of agreement. Ambassador Choi remained calm. "May I respond, High Arbiter?" he asked. Nolan gestured with one webbed hand. "Please." Choi looked up at Veth, then around at the rest of the chamber. "Counselor Veth raises a fair question. Why do our guards carry no weapons?" He paused. "The answer is simple. Captain Park and his team provide all the protection Earth's delegation requires. We do not need anything more." Actor by Zen. Everyone. Silence followed. Then Veth laughed. It was a harsh, clicking sound. "All the protection you require," he repeated. "Against what? A strong wind?" His delegation laughed with him. "Human, we have fought wars across star systems, We have faced enemies with technology beyond your understanding. Your guards look like they are here to serve drinks, not provide security." Some other delegations joined in the laughter. Captain Park stood by the wall, his hands clasped behind his back. His face showed nothing. Ambassador Choi smiled politely. "I understand your concern, Counselor. But I assure you, we take the safety of these proceedings very seriously. Perhaps more seriously than you realize." Veth leaned forward. "Then prove it. Show us what your unarmed humans can do against real threats." "That won't be necessary," High Arbiter Nolan interrupted. His voice was tired but firm. "The human delegation meets the minimum requirements for attendance. Their choice of security is their own business. We will proceed with the scheduled agenda." Veth sat back down, but his eyes never left the humans. The day's business continued: trade agreements, territorial disputes, resource allocations. But through all of it, the tension remained. That evening, the delegations retired to their assigned quarters. Station Harmony was like a small city, with living areas, restaurants, and common spaces where representatives could meet informally. Captain Park had his team rotate through standard security protocols, checking exits, monitoring communications, and keeping watch over Ambassador Choi. Lieutenant Kim was walking back from a security check when she encountered the Krigsguard in a side corridor. He was young for his species, his shell still bright and unmarked by age. He stepped directly into her path. "Human," he said. Kim stopped. "Yes? I want to see what you can do." He flexed his forearms. "My counselor says you are weak. I think he is right. But I want to be sure." Kim looked at him calmly. "I don't want to fight you." "Of course you don't." He stepped closer. "Because you know you would lose." "No," Kim said. "Because if I fight you, I will hurt you. And that will cause problems for my ambassador." The Krigsguard laughed. "Hurt me? You have no weapons. You have no claws. You have no shell. What could you possibly do to hurt me?" Kim said nothing. She simply waited. The guard's laughter faded. He didn't like being ignored. With a quick motion, he swung his lower right arm at her head. What happened next took less than 3 seconds. Kim moved under his arm, struck twice, once at a joint in his lower arm, once at a gap in his shell near the neck, and then stepped back. The guard collapsed to his knees, unable to breathe properly. His lower right arm hung at a wrong angle. Kim looked down at him. "I told you I would hurt you. You should go to your medical bay." She stepped around him and continued walking down the corridor. She didn't look back. The guard stayed on the floor for a long time, trying to understand what had just happened to him. He had fought enemies before. He had trained since childhood. And this small human woman, with no weapons and no armor, had disabled him before he could even complete his first strike. Back in his quarters, Counselor Veth received the report from his medical team. His guard would recover, but the damage was precise and serious. This wasn't luck. This was skill beyond anything Veth had expected from the supposedly primitive humans. He sat in the darkness of his room and thought about what this meant. He still didn't understand. But for the first time, he wondered if there was something about humans that the galaxy had missed. Somewhere else on the station, Security Chief Morlan reviewed the corridor footage for the 3rd time. He was Talari, experienced in combat, and he had seen many species fight. He watched the human woman move, and he felt something he rarely felt anymore. He felt uncertain. He needed to know more about these humans. And he suspected he would find out soon enough. The next morning, the station was buzzing with news. A human had defeated a Krigsguard in seconds. Some said she had used a hidden blade. Others claimed she had cybernetic implants that made her faster and stronger than any natural being. A few insisted the whole story was made up. Security Chief Morlan knew it was not made up. He had watched the footage 7 times before he finally stopped. Each time, he noticed something new. The way the human woman had read the guard's movement before he even completed it. The way she struck at exactly the right points to cause maximum damage with minimum effort. The way she walked away without rushing, without fear, without even checking to see if he would get up and attack again. She had known he wouldn't. Morlun was Telari. His people were known throughout the galaxy as fierce warriors. He had served in 3 conflicts, and had personally fought enemies twice his size. But watching that footage made him feel like a student who had just discovered his teacher knew secrets he had never imagined. He needed to speak with the humans. That morning, Counselor Veth filed a formal complaint with the council. He stood before High Arbiter Nolan and demanded justice for his injured guard. The human woman attacked him without cause, Veth declared. This is an act of aggression against the Krix Dominion. Ambassador Choi rose from his seat. High Arbiter, I request that the security footage be reviewed before any judgment is made. Nolan agreed. The footage was played for the entire council chamber. Everyone watched as the Krix guard stepped in front of Lieutenant Kim. They heard him challenge her. They saw him swing first, and they saw what she did to him. When it ended, the chamber was silent. The footage clearly shows self-defense, Nolan said. Counselor Veth, your complaint is denied. But Veth wasn't finished. Then I demand an inspection of the human guards, he said. What that woman did is not possible for a normal biological being. She must have illegal cybernetic enhancements or concealed weapons. I demand proof that the humans are not cheating. Murmurs of agreement came from several delegations. Even those who didn't like Veth were curious. What the human woman had done seemed impossible. Nolan looked at Ambassador Choi. Ambassador, would your team be willing to submit to a full medical inspection? It would settle this matter permanently. Choi glanced at Captain Park, who gave a small nod. We would be happy to, Choi said. We have nothing to hide. The inspection took place that afternoon in Station Harmony's medical center. The best doctors from 5 different species conducted the examination. They scanned every member of the human security team from head to toe. They checked for cybernetic implants, genetic modifications, concealed weapons, chemical enhancements. Anything that could explain what Lieutenant Kim had done. They found nothing. The humans were baseline biological organisms. Their bones were normal. Their muscles were normal. Their reflexes were within expected human ranges. They had no implants, no modifications, no hidden technology. They were simply human. The lead doctor, a Voss named Terim, presented the findings to the council that evening. The human guards are unmodified, he announced. They possess no illegal enhancements of any kind. Whatever they are capable of, it comes from their natural biology and their training. Veth stood up immediately. That's impossible. I saw what that woman did. No natural being can move like that. The scans do not lie, Counselor, Terim said. The humans are exactly what they appear to be. Veth sat down slowly. He didn't speak again for the rest of the session, but he spent the entire time staring at Captain Park, who stood motionless by the wall like a statue. After the session ended, word spread quickly through the station. The humans had no cybernetics, no hidden weapons, no tricks. They were just humans. And yet one of them had defeated a Krix guard in 3 seconds using only her hands. Other species began watching the human guards more carefully. They noticed things they had missed before. The way Captain Park always seemed to know when someone was approaching, even from behind. The way Sergeant Han's eyes tracked movement across the room without his head turning. The way Private Bake always stood in positions that gave her clear lines of sight to every entrance. They moved like predators, quiet, patient, aware of everything. A group of Telari guards approached Chief Morlun with their concerns. What are these humans? One of them asked. They make us nervous. Morlun didn't have an answer. But he knew someone who might. That night, he found Captain Park in one of the station's observation lounges. The human was standing alone, looking out at the stars. Morlan approached slowly, making sure his footsteps were audible. He had a feeling that surprising this human would be a bad idea. "Captain Park," he said. Park turned. "Chief Morlan, may I speak with you?" "Of course." Morlan stood beside him at the window. For a moment, neither of them said anything. Then Morlan spoke. "I have watched the footage of your lieutenant many times," he said. "I have fought in wars. I have trained soldiers. I have never seen anything like what she did." Park nodded slowly. "Lieutenant Kim is very skilled." "It's not just skill," Morlan said. "The way she moved, she knew what the guard was going to do before he did it. She struck at points that should have been protected by his shell. She did it all in less than 3 heartbeats." He turned to face Park. "What are you?" Park was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "We are human." "That's not an answer." "It's the only answer I have." Morlan felt frustration building. "My people are warriors. We have fought across the galaxy. We carry weapons that can destroy vehicles. And yet I watched your lieutenant defeat an armed guard with her bare hands like it was nothing. I need to understand." Quote, Park looked at him. His expression was calm, almost gentle. "Chief Morlan, I can tell you that we are not enhanced. We have no implants. We have no secret technology. Everything we do comes from training and experience. What kind of training creates something like that?" Park turned back to the window. "The kind that takes a lifetime." Morlan stood there, unsatisfied. He could tell that Park was not lying. But he also knew the human wasn't telling him everything. "Tomorrow's council session," Park said suddenly. "I suggest you watch carefully." Morlan looked at him. "Why? What's going to happen?" Park didn't answer directly. "The galaxy has been wondering what humans are capable of. I think tomorrow, they will get a better idea." He paused. "Good night, Chief." He walked away, leaving Morlan alone, at the window. The Telari chief stood there for a long time, thinking. He had spent his life around warriors and soldiers from dozens of species. He knew what danger looked like, and everything in his experience told him that Captain Park was one of the most dangerous beings he had ever met. But what scared him most was that Park didn't act dangerous. He was quiet, polite, calm. He didn't boast, or threaten, or display his strength. That meant he didn't need to. Morlan returned to his quarters and began reviewing security protocols. If something was going to happen tomorrow, he wanted to be ready. But deep down, he suspected that no matter how ready he was, the humans would still surprise him. He was right. The council chamber was full when the morning session began. Every seat was taken. Representatives from all 47 species had come to vote on a major resource allocation agreement. The decision would affect dozens of worlds, and tensions were high. Captain Park had positioned his team carefully. To most observers, the 4 humans seemed scattered randomly around the chamber. Lieutenant Kim stood near the main entrance. Sergeant Han was by a side door. Private Bake had found a spot near the front, close to the speaker's platform, and Park himself stood at the back, where he could see everything. It looked casual. It was not. Each of them had clear sightlines. Each of them could reach Ambassador Choi in seconds. And together, they covered every possible angle of attack. Park felt the tension in the room. He had felt it building since they arrived on the station. A vote like this created winners and losers. Losers sometimes did desperate things. He looked at his team. Kim gave him a small nod. Han blinked once, which was his way of saying he was ready. Beck, the youngest, kept her eyes moving across the crowd. High Arbiter Nolan called the session to order. The debate began. Representatives argued about fair distribution, historical claims, and economic needs. Voices rose and fell. Some species threatened to withdraw from agreements. Others made promises they probably wouldn't keep. Park didn't listen to the words. He listened to the sounds underneath the words. The way someone's breathing changed. The shift of weight in a chair. The small movements that people made when they were nervous, or angry, or afraid. Something was wrong. He couldn't identify it yet. But his instincts, trained over 20 years, told him that danger was close. He looked at Bake. She was staring at the observation gallery above the main floor. Her eyes were fixed on a specific point. Park followed her gaze. The gallery was full of aides and minor officials watching the proceedings. Most of them looked bored, but one figure, wearing the robes of a minor trading species, was sitting too still. Their hands were hidden under a cloak. Park moved his hand in a small signal. Bake saw it. So did Kim and Han. They were ready. The debate continued. High Arbiter Nolan was about to call for the vote. He raised his webbed hand, and then everything happened at once. The figure in the gallery threw back their cloak and raised a plasma pistol. The weapon was aimed directly at Nolan's head. Private Bake was already moving. She had seen the assassin's shoulder tense half a second before they moved. She had calculated the angle, the distance, and the timing in that same half second. By the time the plasma pistol was fully raised, she was sprinting. The assassin fired. Bake grabbed a metal serving tray from a table as she ran. She dove in front of the shot and brought the tray up at exactly the right angle. The plasma bolt hit the metal and deflected into the ceiling, where it burned a black hole in the material. The entire chamber erupted into chaos. Representatives screamed and dove for cover. Security teams from a dozen species raised their weapons and shouted orders at each other. No one knew what was happening, but the humans knew. While Bake protected the High Arbiter, Sergeant Han was already scaling the wall to the gallery. The wall was 12 feet of smooth metal with no handholds. Han went up it in 4 seconds, using the friction of his palms and the edges of his boots. He moved, like something that had been climbing walls its entire life. The assassin tried to fire again. Han reached them first. He struck 3 times: wrist, elbow, throat, and the assassin collapsed. The plasma pistol fell to the floor. 11 seconds. That's how long it took from the first shot to the assassin being unconscious on the ground. Captain Park and Lieutenant Kim had Ambassador Choi surrounded before most people in the chamber had even processed what was happening. Other security teams were still shouting and pointing weapons at shadows. The humans had already ended the threat. Chief Moreland pushed through the crowd to reach the gallery. He found Han standing over the unconscious assassin, who had been secured with strips torn from their own clothing. Han's breathing was completely normal. He wasn't even sweating. "How did you get up here so fast?" Moreland asked. Han looked at him with his unblinking eyes. "I climbed." Moreland looked at the smooth wall. There were no ladders, no handholds, nothing. "That's not possible." No. Han didn't respond. He simply waited for station security to take custody of the assassin. Down in the chamber, High Arbiter Nolan was still alive because a young human woman had deflected a plasma bolt with a serving tray. The Arbiter's hands were shaking. He had been in politics for 60 years and had never come that close to death. Private Bake stood nearby, still holding the tray. There was a melted hole in the center, where the plasma had hit, another few inches to either side, and the bolt would have gone past her and killed Nolan. "How did you know?" Nolan asked her. His voice was weak. "How did you know he was going to shoot?" IT. Bake considered the question. "I saw his shoulder move," she said. "The way he tensed before he raised the weapon. I knew what he was going to do before he did it." Nolan stared at her. "You saw his shoulder move? From 30 feet away?" "Yes. And you calculated that you could reach me in time? That you could deflect the shot?" Bake nodded. "I wasn't completely sure about the tray. I thought it had a 70% chance of working." Nolan didn't know what to say. This young woman had risked her life on a 70% chance to save someone she had never met. The chamber slowly returned to order. The assassin was taken away for questioning. The damaged ceiling was marked for repair. Security teams from other delegations stood around, looking embarrassed. They had done nothing while 4 unarmed humans had stopped an assassination in 11 seconds. Counselor Veth had watched the whole thing from his seat. He hadn't moved during the attack. He had been frozen, like everyone else. But he had seen everything. He had seen Private Bake read the future and run toward a plasma bolt instead of away from it. He had seen Sergeant Han climb a wall that couldn't be climbed. He had seen Captain Park and Lieutenant Kim move with perfect coordination. No words needed between them. His guards carried weapons that could destroy a small vehicle. They had stood there, uselessly, while the humans saved the High Arbiter's life. For the first time in his life, Counselor Veth felt something he had never felt toward another species. He felt afraid. After the session was suspended, High Arbiter Nolan requested a private meeting with Ambassador Choi. His aide tried to object the Arbiter needed rest, but Nolan waved him off. "I need to understand," he said. "I need to understand what humans are." Choi agreed to the meeting. It was scheduled for that evening. In Nolan's private chambers, Captain Park stood outside the council chamber as the delegations filed out. Chief Morlan approached him. "You knew," Morlan said. "Last night, you told me to watch carefully. You knew something was going to happen." Park shook his head. "I didn't know. But I felt it. The tension in this place has been building. Situations like this create opportunities for violence." He paused. "We were ready for violence. That's our job." Morlan was quiet for a moment. Then he asked, "That young one, Bake." She ran toward a plasma bolt. "She's just a private. The lowest rank on your team. And she did that. 1-1400. 1-1400. 1-1400. 1-1400. 1-14. Yes. Would all humans do that?" Park considered the question. "Not all. But many. More than you might think." Morlan looked at him with new eyes. He had thought, at first, that the humans were strange and possibly foolish for coming without weapons. Then he had thought they were hiding something, some technology or enhancement that explained their abilities. Now he realized the truth was much simpler and much more frightening. The humans weren't hiding anything. They were exactly what they appeared to be. They were just trained and prepared and willing to do whatever was necessary to complete their mission. And they were very, very good at it. "This evening," Morlan said, "when your ambassador meets with the High Arbiter, I want to be there. I want to understand." Park nodded. "I'll make sure you're invited." He walked away to rejoin his team, leaving Morlan standing alone with his thoughts. And he suspected that before this was over, he would see much more. High Arbiter Nolan's private chambers were simple and quiet. The walls were decorated with art from his homeworld, images of water and sky and the great migrations of his ancestors. He sat in a chair that supported his amphibian body comfortably, and he waited. Ambassador Choi arrived first, with Captain Park at his side. Then Chief Morlan entered, his 4 arms clasped behind his back in a formal posture. And finally, to everyone's surprise, Counselor Veth appeared at the door. "I wish to observe," Veth said. His voice was different than before, quieter. "If that is acceptable." Nolan looked at Ambassador Choi, who nodded. "You are welcome, Counselor." Veth took a position in the corner of the room. He said nothing more. He simply watched. Nolan turned to Choi. "Ambassador, I have served this council for 60 years. I have met representatives from every spacefaring species in the known galaxy. I thought I understood the range of what intelligent life could be." He paused. "Today, your people showed me that I was wrong." Choi smiled gently. "High Arbiter, we haven't hidden anything from you. We answered every question we were asked. We submitted to every inspection." "Yes," Nolan agreed. "And that is what troubles me. You have no cybernetics, no genetic modifications, no secret technology, and yet your young private deflected a plasma bolt with a serving tray. Your sergeant climbed a wall that cannot be climbed. Your team neutralized a threat before any other security force in the chamber could even react. He leaned forward. How is this possible? Choi glanced at Captain Park. Perhaps Captain Park can explain better than I can. Park stepped forward. He stood at ease, his hands at his sides, his posture relaxed. But everyone in the room could feel the quiet power in him. It wasn't threatening, it was simply present, like the heat from a fire. High Arbiter, Park began. To understand what we are, you need to understand where we come from. Earth, Nolan said. Yes, Earth. Park paused, collecting his thoughts. Our planet is not a peaceful place. It never has been. For millions of years, our ancestors survived by being predators. We hunted, we fought, we killed. That was how we lived. Morland shifted uncomfortably. His people were also warriors, but they didn't speak about it so directly. Park continued. When we developed civilization, the violence didn't stop. It just changed form. We fought wars. Thousands of them. Wars over land, over resources, over ideas, over religion. We killed each other in numbers that would shock you. Millions. Tens of millions. Hundreds of millions. The room was silent. Nolan's large eyes blinked slowly. We became very good at violence, Park said. Not because we enjoyed it. Most of us didn't. But because violence was constant. We had to master it, or die. Every culture on Earth developed ways of fighting. Every generation found new methods and new weapons. We studied violence, the way other species study science, or art. We analyzed it. We refined it. We perfected it. Veth spoke from his corner. You are describing savages. Park looked at him without anger. We are describing survivors. Earth was not kind to us. We had to become hard to live there. But that was long ago, Nolan said. Surely humanity has evolved beyond such primitive needs. We have, Park agreed. And we haven't. The violence is part of us. We can't remove it. But we have learned to control it. We have learned to use it only when necessary. He paused. That is what you saw today. Not savagery. Control. Morland stepped forward. The training you mentioned? What does it involve? Park turned to him. My team and I trained for 10 years before we were assigned to diplomatic protection. 10 years of full-time preparation. 18 hours a day. Every day. We studied hundreds of martial traditions from Earth's history. We learned anatomy so we could strike at weak points. We learned psychology so we could predict what an enemy would do. We learned to control our bodies, our breathing, our heart rate, our pain response. We learned to see everything and react to anything. That is why your private saw the assassin's shoulder move, Nolan said slowly. Yes. And to calculate responses instantly. And to act without hesitation. Park looked at the High Arbiter directly. We carry no weapons. Because weapons are limitations. They can be taken away. They can malfunction. They can be detected and banned. But our training cannot be taken from us. Our bodies cannot be disarmed. The room was quiet as everyone processed this information. Ambassador Choi spoke up. There is something else you should know, High Arbiter. Captain Park's team is not unusual by Earth standards. They are excellent. Yes, but they are not unique. What do you mean? Nolan asked. Earth has over 40 million people trained to a similar level. They make up our special security forces, and beyond them, our planetary defense force includes over 2 billion soldiers trained for combat. The numbers hung in the air. 2 billion soldiers. From a single planet. Veth's mandibles clicked rapidly. That's impossible. No civilization maintains such forces without constant warfare. We don't have constant warfare, Choi said. Not anymore. We have peace. But we remember what war cost us. We maintain our readiness, because we never want to pay that price again. Nolan was struggling to absorb all of this. Captain Park, he said finally, I must ask you a direct question. Your people are clearly capable of great violence. You could, if you wished, conquer the galaxy. Why haven't you? I must ask you again. Park was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was softer than before. Because we conquered our own planet first, many times, and we learned what comes after conquest. He paused. Ashes. Regret. The long work of rebuilding what we destroyed. We learned that winning a war is easy. Living with what you've done is hard. He looked at Nolan. We came to the stars hoping to be better than we were. We sent diplomats instead of warships, because we're trying to prove to ourselves as much as anyone that we can build something instead of destroying it. The room was silent. Morlan spoke. So you carry no weapons to diplomatic meetings because we don't need them, Park said. And because carrying them would tell the galaxy that we still think of them as enemies. We want to offer trust, not threats. Counselor Veth moved from his corner. His posture had changed. The arrogance was gone. Today, he said, your young soldier risked her life to save the High Arbiter. She ran toward a plasma bolt to protect someone she had never met from a species that has done nothing but insult her people since they arrived. Park nodded. Yes. Why? Veth's voice was genuinely confused. Why would she do that? Park considered the question. Because that is what we are here to do. To protect. To serve. To show the galaxy that humans can be trusted with power because we choose not to use it unless we must. Veth looked at him for a long time. Then he did something no one expected. He bowed his head. I was wrong about your people, he said. I ask for your forgiveness. Park bowed his head in return. There is nothing to forgive. You didn't know. Now, you do. Nolan rose from his chair. He was old, and the day had exhausted him, but his voice was strong. Ambassador Choi, I believe I speak for many when I say that humanity is not what we expected. You are more dangerous than we imagined, and also more honorable. Choi smiled. We try to be both. High Arbiter. We don't always succeed, but we try. High Arbiter. High Arbiter. High Arbiter. We try. High Arbiter. High Arbiter. We try. High Arbiter. We try. High Arbiter. We try. High Arbiter. Nolan nodded slowly. Tomorrow, the Council will vote on how to respond to what we learned today. I cannot predict the outcome, but I can tell you that I, personally, am grateful that humans chose to send protectors instead of conquerors. He reached out his webbed hand. Ambassador Choi took it in both of his own. So are we, Choi said. So are we. The meeting ended. As they left Nolan's chambers, Chief Morlan walked beside Captain Park. I think I understand now, Morlan said. You are not unarmed because you are weak. You are unarmed because you are strong enough that you don't need weapons. And you want us to see that. Park nodded. If we came with guns and armor, you would see threats. We came with empty hands, so you could see something else. What? Park looked at him. Choice. The choice to be peaceful, when we could easily be violent. That is what we want the galaxy to see. Morlan was quiet. He had spent his life among warriors who displayed their strength through weapons and armor and fierce words. The humans displayed their strength through silence and stillness and empty hands. It was, he realized, far more frightening, and far more admirable. The emergency council session began 2 hours after sunrise. Every representative was present. Every seat was filled. The chamber hummed with tension and whispered conversations. Captain Park stood at his usual position by the back wall. His team was spread around the room in their careful pattern. They looked the same as always. Calm, quiet, watchful. but the way others looked at them had changed. Before, the other species had seen unarmed guards and assumed weakness. Now they saw unarmed guards and understood that the humans didn't need weapons because they were weapons. High Arbiter Nolan called the session to order. "We are here to discuss the matter of humanity," he announced. "The events of yesterday have raised concerns among many delegations. All will have a chance to speak." The first speaker was a representative from the Outer Rim worlds. He was afraid, and he didn't hide it. "Humans have been hiding their true nature," he declared. "They pretended to be weak while secretly being dangerous. This is deception. We should sanction them. Quarantine their system. Keep them away from peaceful species." Several delegates made sounds of agreement. The next speaker was from a species that had been conquered twice in its history. "Any civilization that maintains 2 billion soldiers is planning for war," she said. "We have seen this before. Empires do not grow so powerful without using that power. We should act before it is too late." More agreement followed. The mood in the chamber was shifting toward fear and hostility. Then Councillor Veth rose to speak. The chamber went quiet. Everyone knew Veth had been the loudest critic of humans since they arrived. They expected him to deliver the strongest condemnation. He did not. "I came to this council believing humans were weak and foolish," Veth began. "I mocked them for carrying no weapons. I challenged their right to be here." He paused. "I was wrong. I was wrong." Veth began. "I was wrong. I 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 was wrong." Murmurs rippled through the chamber. "Yesterday, I watched a young human woman run toward a plasma bolt to save the High Arbiter's life. She did not know him. He is not of her species. She had nothing to gain by protecting him, but she did it anyway, knowing she might die." Veth's mandibles clicked slowly. "My guards carry weapons that can destroy armored vehicles. They did nothing, while she risked everything." He looked around the chamber. "I have thought about this all night. Why would someone do such a thing? Why would these humans, who we now know are more dangerous than any of us imagined, choose to come here without weapons? Why would they not simply conquer us all?" He turned to where Captain Park stood. "I asked the human captain this question. He told me that his people have conquered their own world many times. They learned what comes after conquest. They learned that victory is meaningless if you destroy everything you were trying to protect." The chamber was completely silent now. "The humans could threaten us," Veth said. "They could dominate us. Instead, they came with empty hands and offered protection. They are not hiding their strength. They are controlling it. And that, I believe, is harder than any battle." He sat down. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then High Arbiter Nolan rose. "I would like to invite a human to address the council. Captain Park, would you speak?" "I. End. Then. I. End." Park looked at Ambassador Choi, who nodded. The captain walked to the center platform. It was the first time he had stood before the full council. Every eye in the chamber was on him. He stood in silence for a moment, looking at the assembled representatives. Then he began. "I understand your fear," he said. His voice was calm and clear. "If I were in your position, learning what you have learned, I would be afraid too. A species that maintains billions of soldiers. A species that has spent its entire history perfecting violence. That sounds like a threat." He paused. "But I want you to consider something. Every member of my team has killed. We have taken lives in the course of our duties. We carry that weight every day. We do not enjoy it. We are not proud of it. But we accept it because we believe in what we protect." He looked around the chamber. "We train to be dangerous so that we can afford to be gentle. If we were weak, We would need weapons, and threats, and shows of force. Because we are strong, we can offer open hands and calm words. We can take risks for peace that weaker beings cannot take. A Tillery delegate interrupted. Pretty words. But how do we know you won't change? How do we know that one day humans won't decide to use that strength against us? Park considered the question. You don't, he admitted. We can't prove what we will do in the future. No one can. All we can show you is what we choose to do now. And right now, we choose to be here as diplomats, not conquerors. We choose to protect, not destroy. We choose to talk before we fight. He paused. The deadliest thing about humans is not how well we fight. It is that we still believe fighting can become unnecessary. We have seen so much war, so much death, that we want desperately to find another way. We are here because we hope the galaxy can be that other way. The chamber was silent. Then Ambassador Choi stood. High Arbiter, I would like to make a gesture of trust. I ask Captain Park and his entire team to leave this chamber. Park looked at him sharply. Ambassador, please, Captain. This is important. Park hesitated. Then he signaled to his team. Kim, Han, and Baek looked at each other. They didn't like it. But they followed orders. One by one, they walked out of the chamber. The human delegation sat alone and unprotected among 47 species that had been debating whether to sanction them. 20 minutes passed. The debate continued, but slower now. Representatives kept glancing at the humans, sitting there with no guards and no weapons. Ambassador Choi listened to every speaker. He answered questions calmly. He didn't show fear. Finally, High Arbiter Nolan called for a vote. Shall the Galactic Council impose sanctions on humanity? All in favor? Finally, all in favor. A few hands rose. Not many. All opposed? The chamber filled with raised hands and appendages. The motion fails, Nolan announced. Humanity will not be sanctioned. But he wasn't finished. I would like to add a personal statement to the record. In 60 years on this council, I have seen many species claim to want peace while preparing for war. I have seen few willing to make themselves vulnerable to prove their sincerity. Today, the humans did exactly that. They sent away their guards and trusted us not to harm them. That is an act of courage that deserves recognition. He looked at Ambassador Choi. On behalf of the Council, I thank humanity for their trust. We will try to be worthy of it. After the session ended, something unexpected happened. Representatives from several species approached the human delegation. The Tillery wanted to discuss exchange programs. A coalition of smaller worlds asked about defensive alliances. Even a Krix trade minister, one of Veth's own people, requested a private meeting to explore economic partnerships. In one day, humanity had gone from being mocked outsiders to being sought-after partners. Captain Park and his team were waiting at the entrance to the council chamber when the delegation emerged. Park fell into step beside Ambassador Choi. That was a risk, Park said quietly. Choi smiled. Calculated risk. You taught me about those. If something had happened to you, nothing happened. Because we chose to trust, and they chose to be worthy of trust. That's how peace works. Captain. Park was quiet for a moment. Then he nodded. Yes, Ambassador. As they walked toward the docking bay to return to their ship, Chief Morlan intercepted them one last time. Captain Park, he said, I finally understand why you carry no weapons. Why is that? Morlan looked at him with respect in all four of his eyes. You don't need to prove anything. Weapons make you look strong. Being unarmed when you don't need weapons makes you look unbeatable. Park shook his hand, a human gesture that Morlan had researched after their first meeting. Take care, Chief. And you, Captain. The human delegation boarded their shuttle. As the engines powered up, Lieutenant Kim looked at Captain Park. Do you think they truly understand now? She asked. Do they really know what we are? Park looked out the window at Station Harmony, where dozens of species were watching their departure. "They understand enough," he said. "That's how it always starts." The shuttle lifted off and turned toward open space. Behind them, the station grew smaller. But the impact of what had happened there would spread across the galaxy in the weeks and months ahead. The story would be told and retold. How the humans came without weapons. How they fought without guns. How they offered trust when they could have offered threats. How they proved their strength by choosing not to use it. Other species would wonder, would argue, would debate what it meant, and slowly, carefully, they would begin to see humans differently, not as the weak species that carried no weapons, but as the strong species that didn't need them.